Well, I didn't agree to it. I'm here as a prisoner.
Well, I want to start off by saying congratulations on the album. This is an absolutely amazing album that you must be proud of. So I was wondering if you could take us right back to the beginning and tell us a little bit about what you guys were talking about when you first sat down to work on this album.
Well, we really wanted to up our game on this record. We knew that it was our 10th album, and fans were going to have high expectations. And we had high expectations. Like, we knew what this band was capable of. And, we wanted to make an album that we would be happy with, and hopefully fans as well.
So it sounds like you wanted to go to another level. So how did that start out for you? Like, did you start to think about how you could technically make this go to the next level, or what were those discussions around?
Well, it wasn't just about, technical aspects. It was about, making the songs as effective as possible. Like, it doesn't matter if you have a bunch of fancy technical stuff. What matters is if it kicks people's asses. That's two different things. All right, I mean, you could play all the, widdly diddly technical stuff all day long, but if it doesn't move people, what does it matter?
Yeah. So did that change your writing process at all?
Well, the writing process was pretty similar to what we've done before, but I think this time we went even further in really honing the songs and working on the arrangements to make them as effective as possible. A lot of things that got written ended up on the cutting room floor.
Yep.
Because if it didn't help the song, then wait a minute, what are we even doing?
Yep. So I read somewhere a quote where it said that you felt this time around that you guys were challenged in a way that you hadn't been challenged before. I was wondering if you could talk to us a little bit about that.
Well, yeah, some of the stuff to play on this record was quite physically challenging,
Yep.
and mentally challenging as well. Like a song like Chapter for Not Being Hung Upside Down, the arrangement is always shifting just a little bit, right? It's got a lot of parts and they're all tricky, but they're all changing just a little bit each time. So you gotta all be really, really focused and on point throughout the song to even make that thing work.
Yeah. So talk us through that recording process with tracks like that. Did they take longer to record than you would normally take to record a track?
Well, this time it did because we wanted to get it right. Oftentimes, like when you're recording, you can go over and over and over and over again, and you may or may not get it how it needs to be.
Yeah.
But we wanted this time to really capture not just the song, the riffs, the drum parts, but we wanted to really hear our hands, we hear the humanity, hear the expression, the heart and soul of it. That's the part that I think translates to people is, are you capturing the humanity,
Yeah.
the soul, the metal spirit?
Definitely. So I love the fact that before that you said there's a lot of stuff from this album that didn't even make it onto the album, that it ended up on the cutting room floor, because for me that's a sign of maturity. There are a lot of bands out there, I feel, these days that are in such a rush to get an album or a single out that they'll go, yep, that'll do. How difficult of a process is that for you guys to sit down and go, look, you know what, that's just not working, we're not going to include that, or is it an easy process?
Well, sometimes it's easier than others because it's really easy to get really attached to something that you write. Because our songs are like little children. They're like babies,
Yeah.
right? You don't want to just toss one out if it didn't get good grades. I I'm speaking from parental experience here.
Yeah.
So yeah, sometimes it's tough to let something go that you put your heart and soul into, but that's part of the discipline, and that's part of the greater joy. If a song didn't have hard work and sacrifice in it, it's not quite the same. Like when you put on this record, you can hear the hard work in direct evidence. These songs scream out that somebody cared about them and did whatever it took to make the song kick ass.
Yeah, I love that analogy about songs being like children. I was talking to an artist recently, and they said they'd heard one of their tracks remixed for the first time, and they said it felt like having a baby and then giving it to somebody else to go and bring up and release out into the wild was the term that they used. For you as a songwriter, has that always been the way that it's felt for you, that songs are like children that you have to bring up before you can present them to the public?
Yeah, sometimes you gotta spank the fucking shit out of them too, because they don't always behave.
Yeah.
Sometimes you put all that love and parenting into a song, and it turns out to be, some sort of undesirable child that you don't want anything to do with.
Yeah. So we were talking before, and you were saying about different tracks having challenging parts in them. What kind of challenges does that provide for you guys when you go to play them live?
Well, live you got to be on point,
Yeah.
like totally on point for the whole thing. Which, some of these songs have some tricky ass time signatures, and you just staying together as a unit is a challenge.
Yep. So does that just mean lots of rehearsals before tour, or what does that mean for you guys?
Well, that does mean lots of rehearsals.
Yeah.
There's no other way around it. You got to put the time in if you're going to play music like this.
Yep. So talk us through some of the themes on this album as well. Where when you first sat down to start work on this album, were there any themes that you wanted to explore with this album?
Not necessarily. Mostly, I leave it up to the universe, what this song's going to be about.
Yeah.
I will literally just take a book off the shelf, open it to some random page, and hope that there's a song there.
Yeah.
It doesn't always work out, but sometimes it does.
Yeah. It's interesting because I was reading a couple of people's kind of mini articles and mini reviews of people that have listened to this album so far, and a lot of people said they picked up a post-apocalyptic kind of feel with this album.
Well, we are kind of living in a post-apocalypse, so I don't think that's a crazy perception to take.
Yeah. Is that an interesting take for you, though? Like, do you find sometimes as an artist that you'll write a song and have one thing in mind and you'll release it out there and then people will be taking something completely different from that track to what you imagined it to be about in the first place?
Yeah, that is kind of crazy, but it's also part of the fun, right? Sometimes people will see things in there that we didn't necessarily see ourselves, but they're there.
Yeah.
Like, you can't, there's no perfect mirror of artistry when you're making records. Sometimes people will hear things that you never dreamed were in there, but they're in there.
Yep. Now, I noticed that you guys have got a pretty hectic touring schedule coming up, including a trip to Japan. Is there any chance at some stage that we might see you back in Australia in the not-too-distant future?
Well, on the exact same trip that we go to Japan, the very next thing on the list is 6 shows in Australia.
Okay, so how are you feeling about that, heading back to Australia?
Well, pretty good about it. We got cheated out of our last trip to Australia because of the pandemic.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we're overdue for a visit down under.
Yeah. How did you use that time during the pandemic? Because I know a lot of bands out there use that as a time to to really work on writing music. And it's funny because you talk to a lot of local artists over here and they talk about how it was such a boring time, but I find that when I talk to bands from the States or bands from Europe, they talk about how they use that time to write music.
Absolutely. I did a solo record called Saurian Apocalypse during that time. Wrote Nile songs. Spent a lot of time taking guitar lessons, giving guitar lessons, doing just amazing amounts of guitar playing that I would have not otherwise had the chance had not, the world shut down and touring shut down for 2 years. I mean, what else were we going to do?
Yeah.
So we put that time to good use.
Yeah. Did it give you a different perspective on life as well? Because I know here one of the things I found is people are embracing live music a lot more. I think for a lot of us, you went to 2 or 3 shows a week and it was just what we've all done since we were teenagers. But when that was taken away, I think we started to realize what we were losing. Did that change anything for you as well as an artist with how you perceive everything?
Of course, there's no way you could avoid it. Especially with, if you lost loved ones during the pandemic or one's livelihood was taken away, it can't help but, shape, one's worldview.
Yep. Now, you mentioned Upside Down before, Chapter for not being hung upside down, and you mentioned that this is one of your favorite tracks on the new record because it's so much fun to play. Tell us a little bit about that. What makes that track so fun to be able to play?
Because it's always evolving, and it's always got some new way of headbanging just right around the corner. So it's never boring, and it's catchy and fun.
Yeah.
It's definitely meant to be a live song for sure.
Yeah. I also I really liked Overlords of the Black Earth as well as a track. I thought that was an interesting kind of track because it felt like you guys were mixing a few different genres in there as well. Was that part of what you'd talked about earlier about doing things differently this time? Was that something that you wanted to do to explore other genres?
Absolutely. I like a lot of kinds of music besides metal. I mean, metal's my life. But I like listening to lots of stuff, and George as well. George is an incredible jazz drummer. So, we wanted to expand and grow as artists and musicians.
Yep. As you said before too, reaching that milestone of 10 albums, that is a real milestone these days. The amount of bands that come and go after 1 or 2 albums seems to be higher than ever. When you guys actually sat down to work on this and you said that you wanted to make it special because it was the 10th album and you knew your fans would expect that, did that milestone kind of really hit you as well, that you have reached this peak?
It just felt like more responsibility, more expectation. So to us, we're not taking our eyes off being focused on the work. Yeah, we'll celebrate later, I'm sure.
Well, it's also like that 30-year mark as well for you guys, which is no mean feat. Like, surely that must, like, when you think about that, you must think, oh shit, it is 30 years.
Well, I don't have time to think about that. I would love to sit down and go, oh yeah, wow, 30 years. But we're busy.
Yeah. And I guess, like, talking about the tour before as well, with that massive back catalogue that you guys have got these days, does that make it difficult for when you're putting together a set list to come to a country like Australia, because your fans are expecting to hear so much of the music that they love, but you've also got new music to put in there as well?
And a time limit as well. Like, how much can you cram into an hour show?
Yeah.
It's almost like it's over as soon as it starts, and no matter what you do, somebody's going to be upset because they didn't get to hear one of their favorite songs. Yeah. So Yeah, it's kind of an agonizing process. How do we write the set list, knowing that you can't make everybody happy, but you do the best you can.
Definitely. Now, I know we are running out of time very, very quickly as well, so I guess to finish off, what would you like to say to your fans out there before they sit down and take a listen to this album in full on August 23rd?
Thank you for all the years of love and support. We appreciate you, and the Underworld awaits us all.